Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Ring Daily. We are back again. This is the live show of the week, and I'm here with another friend Alex, I was trying to remember how long I've known you, but it's been many, many years, and it's good to get you on
4 or 5 years. Yeah, no,
I
it's really
think
good
it
to
might
be
be longer than that.
Are you serious? That's scary. Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting old.
Yeah, that is a problem, especially my father's reoccurring joke that he tells me every year on my birthday is that your age is just the number of seconds it takes you to stand up.
That's not that far from wrong because I'm incredibly sore today from working out. So I'm really slow moving and very easy to pick off from the herd. But you're like what? You're like 47 now, right, Brad? Somewhere in there? 45, 49,
Spiritually, I'm 47. Since I have a 4-year-old, I golf and I drink scotch and I go to bed at 9:30. So yeah,
that's all fine except for the bedtime. 9:30 is aggressive, even for a guy with a 4-year-old. But okay, we can let that.
I'll tell you what, though, it's 9:30 might be a little bit of exaggeration. I usually like hit the pillow at 9:30, but I'm screwing around on my phone probably till about 10. Really sticking it out late.
You roguish dog. I mean, like, it's fine. I think parents get a kind of a pass on the whole be cool thing because they're exhausted all the time. So I think you're fine.
Yeah, fortunately, my daughter is actually pretty good at sleeping. It's just the nights that I do stay up. 7 o'clock is about when she likes to wake her head up, and
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you are or what state you're in. She's coming in, and those little fingers fit right in between your rib bones. You're like, "Daddy, let's play," and you're like, "Daddy needs an IV of water." But
yes, and that's why scotch is dangerous. But we both know that.
Anyways, Alex, you are now at CrunchBase, as you were showing off before the show started here. And can you, I'm guessing that a lot of people on this show probably aren't familiar with CrunchBase. Can you just walk us through what it is, what you're doing, and what are you doing over there?
Yeah, so I'll give you the hopefully condensed version of this to save everyone time. There's a blog called TechCrunch, and way back in the day, about 10 years ago, it started a little online wiki called CrunchBase. That was a database of private companies. TechCrunch back then was a small little blog before VentureBeat and The Verge and everyone else covered small companies. And CrunchBase was their attempt to kind of put all the information they knew about startups into kind of one bucket. And then over time, it grew into a more sophisticated product. Eventually, AOL bought TechCrunch and therefore bought CrunchBase. And well under the AOL auspices, CrunchBase got more formalized, got its own engineering team, and was built out into its own product. About a year and a half ago, that's rough, that may be a little short, it was spun out of AOL with some private capital. And the company hired me in January to come aboard and start a new media company, or new media brand, if you will. So I run something called CrunchBase News, which is a publication focused on private companies and money right now. And so we're kind of looking at where Silicon Valley and big buckets of cash intersect and trying to understand that perspective. But for the longest time, and the reason why I know Brad, because anyone's confused why I'm here, I was on the Microsoft beat for about 5 years. So I spent time with your boy in many different states. And what's cool is if you cover Microsoft, you end up talking to them about small companies and huge customers. And that kind of plays pretty well into what I do now, looking at companies that sell to both enterprises and consumers. Is that kind of fair, Brad?
Yeah. No, I was going to chastise you later in the show that you need to start coming back to the conferences because they were definitely more fun when you were around. Now I just have to hang out with Paul, and it's not the same.
Paul, if you haven't been to a Microsoft conference with Paul, he kind of sits and then says snarky things to himself while he types on a keyboard that's too small for his relatively large frame, and he sulks. Brad is the social animal. Mary Jo is too busy getting scoops. Tom Warren's being cool, and it's the crew. But yeah, Paul wouldn't be my first choice of friends there.
If I would have known we were going to rag on Paul, which is probably one of my favorite pastime activities, my favorite picture I have of him of all time, this was at Ignite last year. A bottle of water opened in his backpack, and it didn't really ruin anything, but he was afraid it was. So he's in the middle of the conference floor, like his backpack is just scattered all around the floor, and he's in such just a vulnerable state. And what is Brad doing? I'm sitting there taking photos of him and tweeting them.
Oh, of course you are. You're not gonna help him. You're not gonna lend a hand here. No, you're gonna observe the chaos and document that for future laughter.
Exactly. And if his laptop was ruined, it's not like I'm going to be able to fix it right there. I don't have the tools or the capabilities to do that.
No,
But
I mean, also you guys
I want to
have
get back to a
Go for it.
point that you brought up about Microsoft, which I actually think is really probably not a lot of people think about. To your point, you covered them for 5 years, and really, when you cover Microsoft, you can kind of make it whatever you want. If you want to cover consumer stuff, you can. If you want to get into their business world, you most absolutely can. If you want to talk to them, actually, if you want to talk to Microsoft about their largest partners, they will be happy to open that door for you. So when people say, "Oh, you just cover Microsoft," it can be kind of boring. It's just software. It's actually they're a massive conglomerate of many different orgs, and you can kind of make what you want out of it.
That's very, very true. And I would add that this is a point that comes into the platform question. So the biggest tech companies today, Alphabet, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, they're really big platform plays. And so the reason why Microsoft is so diverse, I mean, they sell music, they make mobile OSs, or they kind of did, all the way to gaming, enterprise software, analytics, they're very broad. But then again, all companies are at the top end of the technology company's stack, for lack of a better phrase.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really niche down on any one of these major companies and make it, more than a life's work, because there's so many things going on. The only downside to covering the various big companies, if you focus on one, is you don't get to pick the reporting cohort. So if you cover Apple, for example, all the other reporters are arrogant assholes. Happily, the Microsoft reporting group are actually pretty cool. And that's why I think I stuck with it as long as I did, because, frankly, I mean, we joke about Paul and whatever, but when the reporters get together at a Microsoft event, it's a pretty good time. And everyone works on different
reunion.
Yeah, it always felt really good.
Yep. And I'd be curious to get your take on this, because you were in the Microsoft world definitely through this transition. And I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but Microsoft these days, they're almost kind of boring at this point. Because if you go back to Alex, especially when you were in it with Windows 8 and Windows Mobile was coming around, honest to God, I remember having many conversations being like behind the closed doors, like, guys, is this company going to be around in 10 years? Like, it was Windows 8 had just had a massive flop, wasn't doing anything. Yes. You had Apple with their iPhone growing hundreds of percent every quarter. You had Google, who was trying to figure out this Chromebook stuff, and Microsoft is sitting there coming out with probably their worst software ever.
It's a pretty good point. I think a lack of chaos can be construed as boredom. But if you go back to the Windows 8 example, just to pick one point, that was during the Steven Sinofsky era, really. I mean, they did Windows 8 and Surface RT in the same building, if I recall. And now looking backwards, I run Windows 10 at home. I think we'll get to that. And also, you're sitting there with what I presume is a Surface Pro 4. So even though the company
Surface
has
Pro, the latest one.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Even though the company now has become more boring, it's almost because some questions are answered. And the earlier questions that would be existential to the company, like, can Microsoft make a big dent in public cloud computing, has been answered with Azure. The answer is yes, it can, actually. And can it have a long-term hardware business outside of phones? Well, yes, it can. Will Xbox survive another generational cycle? Well, yes. Will Windows everywhere work? This was the question that you and I asked the Windows team for years. Will this idea of one Windows everywhere actually function? The answer is mostly. So I agree that it's boring due to some questions being answered, but I don't think that makes it less interesting, because now we know where all the chess pieces are, and we know how the game may unfold, but it's still fun to watch. I mean, even though I cover Microsoft probably 4 or 5 times a quarter now tops, but I still can't get away from it because I find it so fascinating. Just because it's such a big company. I mean, dear God, they have tens of thousands of employees and tens of billions in revenue. I still can't stop looking at it.
Yeah, and I fully agree with what you said. We know their path forward. We know where they're investing heavily. One of the things I've grappled onto, Paul always falls asleep, is I'm infinitely fascinated by Azure, mostly because I see that as their longevity play, at least in the corporate world. But more specifically, they're going up against Amazon, and Amazon has a massive lead and a massive mind share, and they're throwing literally everything they got into Azure at this point, and it's evolving at such a rapid pace that it's almost, honestly, even though I look at this stuff just about every day, it's almost impossible to keep up with, because there's announcements, it seems like, every week about new features that they're just dumping money into for that platform.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the era before Satya became CEO. So kind of the tail end of the Ballmer era. Back when I was a wee little noob, I was pitched a meeting by Microsoft. We were going to some dinner with them, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come out early and meet this guy named Satya Nadella from the cloud team? He's pretty cool." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." I've never heard of this guy. And so I got to meet him way before he became CEO, and we talked about Azure and cloud computing and PaaS, IaaS, the whole stack.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very impressed by him, obviously, because he's, as you know, just super sharp. But since he became the CEO, I'm not surprised that Azure has maintained its resource collection as part, as a division of the company, because they understand how key it is. But what I like about the Amazon comparison you made is that isn't Seattle cool? I mean, I really kind of feel like Silicon Valley is now almost not as cool as the Seattle area, because the two leading cloud players are not here. I mean, I'm here in San Francisco, which now feels a bit passé. I've got Postmates, which is not as cool as AWS at all. I don't mean to be rude. I use Postmates.
Sure. No. Somebody had a pretty good analogy. They said the apps are made in San Francisco and they run in Seattle. I was like, you know what? That kind of makes sense.
Who said that? That's really good.
I don't know. It was on one of the Twitter things. Somebody retweeted it, and I was like, you know what? That's I'll buy into that. Then they kind of like shot themselves in the foot, and then they said, all the money goes to New York, and then they try to like tie in all the other big cities, and they should have just stopped while they were ahead. But
yeah. Sometimes analogies can kind of break down as they go further. But the question then becomes, can Google, which is now an Alphabet company, actually take some market share away from Microsoft and Amazon, and can startups in the Seattle area take some of the ascendancy away from Silicon Valley? The thing that I would add there is I don't know if the current tech boom cycle is going to last long enough for that to happen. And so I wonder if we're going to get frozen in this current kind of stasis point when the markets have a correction sometime in the next 12 months. That's kind of off topic, but it's a question that I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, no, that's certainly very, very relevant to topic, because anybody who has a 401k or any sort of investments is looking at the market going, man, these returns are great. And then the little thing in the back of your mind going, this isn't sustainable. Like, this is going to collapse.
Are we allowed to make political jokes on this fine podcast?
As well, yeah.
Okay, I was going to make some sort of Trump joke, but I mean, I feel like I've now kind of lost the moment. Anyways, my 401k was great this year, and I don't think it's going to last. Many people know, I know Alex, I have a pretty strong financial background, and I keep looking to see, okay, what's going to be the catalyst that tips everything? And there are people making a whole lot more money than I am that have much bigger investments than I do, funds in the billions of dollars, saying, okay, what's going to be the catalyst that tips off the market, and what should we be looking at to say, okay, it's going to collapse? Is it housing? Is it student loans? Is it consumer debt? If I had this answer, trust me, I would be on an island just counting my hundreds, but I don't. Yeah, I wonder if it's not going to be one single catalyst. I mean, going back to the 2008 collapse, we tend to point one finger at mortgage-backed securities and so forth. But I wonder if that's too narrow. I mean, we've all read Too Big to Fail and whatever. But this case, I think you outlined a couple of them. I mean, like, we have a huge subprime bubble in used car debt. We have a student loan bubble. We have a medical expense bubble. And that's just domestically. We have a stock market valuation bubble. We have a private capital overspend into startups bubble. There's a lack of liquidity on exits for private companies of any stripe and size. That's just domestically. Then you add in global problems: Greece, Italy, Spain, depressed oil prices, chaos in Venezuela and Argentina. You have a huge debt crisis in China, North Korean tensions. I mean, you've got declining populations in Japan, Russia's a mess. It doesn't look that good globally, frankly. And yet the stock markets are at record highs. So to me, I just look at the mismatch and go, yeah, no. And I just hope that I get to keep my job if things fall apart,
Yes, I know that feeling very well. Because there will be a correction. I don't think anybody disputes that. It's just how big and what's the underlying impact going to be, and is there going to be another catalyst that can prop things up? I don't know. That's these are good economist questions, of which I am not.
No, Brad, you should sell your house, sell that nice house of yours, and buy Bitcoin. I hear it's going to be big.
If this was like 2007, I would have been all in. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this Bitcoin, and I'm going to be curious to get your insight on it. Everybody always looks back and says, "Oh man, if I would have put $10,000 in whatever 2008, I would have $30 million right now." But here's the reality of that: if you did that, I guarantee. Well, I can't guarantee. I know my ass. If I would have doubled my money, I would have gotten out. right? You would have put 10,000 in, you're like, oh God, I can get 20,000 bucks, I'm cashing out. Nobody would hold on to it for that long, but yeah.
Unless you forgot about it. But then there's also the risk of theft or putting it on the wrong exchange, having it stolen. I mean, the Bitcoin boom is great. And I'm sure you do have friends that hold cryptos. I can't because, journalism rules, but I respect it. And I have some friends that do well, and I've had some friends that don't. But most people that I know are late to the game. Most people I know bought in at an expensive price, and most people I know aren't up that much. And so to me, it's fun, but you have to be so into the community to understand the technical differences. And we talked about this a few minutes ago. To have an edge, it's very, very hard to get one, because by the time you and your friends all know about it, you're far, far, far too late. And so that's not to say Bitcoin won't go up further. It may. I mean, I have absolutely no idea. But I think the days of 1,000% returns, given that we're now in the thousands of dollars per coin, are probably behind us. And so it may be, and I'm not your investment advisor, more prudent to buy some low-cost index funds. But, hell, that's boring.
Yeah, no, my advice is always to people, it says you can never go wrong with an index fund. There's a reason they exist, and their returns are easily tracked over time. But the one reason why, and I'll be curious to see, do you ever think Bitcoin, I mean, I guess it depends how you define mainstream, but do you ever think it's going to get out of that kind of bubble that it's in right now, where it's only kind of more technical people? Like, do you think your parents would ever invest in Bitcoin or even use them?
No, but there was I'm going to have to butcher this point because I only recall about half of it, but it'll do. There was a wager between, I think 2 VCs from several years ago. I think the bet was over a really nice pair of socks. But the question was, would Bitcoin eventually take over a large percentage of the global payment transaction volume? And it was a good question, because there was a second thing added to it, which was, and will people know? And I think there's a decent chance that decentralized blockchains will play a role in the future of banking and commerce. But I don't think that it's going to be a consumer-facing protocol like Bitcoin, which is too complex, too chaotic, and as you've seen in the recent news, too unsettled internally to be trusted by a major player like that. So I think that we'd have to presume that this technology goes into the background somewhat, at which point I can actually see it being very large and pervasive. But you don't actually know really how your credit card processing works for this website. Not really. You use Stripe, or you use PayPal, or you use whatever, or Square. And so if that became blockchain behind the scenes and didn't change your fee structure, fine, whatever. But my parents are not going to buy Bitcoin. They're not going to buy Ethereum. They don't want to hear about ICOs, and they don't particularly care about what the crypto kids are whining about on GDAX. So, it's cool tech, but the current iterations of it, I think, are niche, and that's a good point.
No, I completely agree. Actually, the ledger system behind, which is what Alex is referring to, is very fascinating. My background is in accounting, and the accounting systems used by large banks today is extremely antiquated. And so what's funny, I don't know if funny is the right word, is that all these companies or investors made bets on Bitcoin, right? They either had exchanges and all this other stuff. And not every investor made this mistake, but what nobody was really looking at was that saying, hey, the actual infrastructure to run this stuff could very easily be applied to any sort of commerce. And that's exactly what you're hitting on. And I think that's where the real money is going to be made from Bitcoin, is actually those systems, rather than the actual monetary transaction itself.
Yeah, I mean, if this can be a way to save banks multiple basis points per transaction, it's going to add up to a whole bunch of cash, and they will throw investment at it. But until it has that specific sort of change their bottom line, it's going to remain a hobby project. I mean, so if you've seen the headlines that are like, Goldman Sachs launches, blockchain collective, they're just playing with it, which is what they should do.
Yep.
I mean, they shouldn't be ignoring it. But that's not like they're moving over their entire systems over to this sort of technology. It's definitely still niche. So, you know what, though? But this is the cool thing about tech. I mean, the amount of experimentation going on is awesome. And a lot of it's going to fail, and a lot of it's silly, but I would never have thought of this. Like, what a cool way to approach money and change the way we think about what money is. I like it. Bitcoin fans are annoying as hell. Bitcoin at all are pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is why I don't have
the thing that, yeah, no, I completely agree. The idea of a decentralized currency is actually golden, right? That's been dreamed about for years, decades, probably even longer than that. The problem I have with it is the ability for manipulation. A a large investor could come in and essentially skew the markets. There's rulings and laws in place that you can't do that in like the NYSE, and you can't bait and switch some of these currencies and that kind of thing. But it is truly a good representation of what the free market is, because it's decentralized. There's no governing body other than the value of the price of the commodity.
Yes, but just for everyone's perspective here, the aggregate value of all cryptocurrencies was something like $117 billion as of yesterday. So it's going to be close to that. So all the cryptos in the world put together are worth about 1/4 of one Microsoft, maybe even a fifth. So it's big, it matters, and a lot of people are having fun, but let's not get it too twisted. This is not the second coming. This is still a pretty niche technology that has a lot of different stakeholders trying to figure out how to make it work. But it's cool, but it's just not that big yet.
Yeah, no, that's a very good grounding perspective. And that actually really does put in perspective about how tiny it is truly in the world of transactions and currencies. But everything starts somewhere, and this has lasted longer than I honestly thought it would.
That's because you and I are big haters who like GAAP net income and not adjusted EBITDA, and that's why we were wrong here, because we're just not enough fun. And I don't even mean that as a joke. I mean that honestly.
No, that's exactly right. I cannot stand it when companies don't provide their financials. They always say, all right, here's our GAAP. Microsoft did it for a while. I don't think they're going to do it next quarter. I think they're getting off of it. But they would say, okay, our income was 24 billion, but adjusted inflation and doing whatever the hell it is was actually 28 billion. And so depending on which publication you read, it's like, did they make 24 billion? They make 28 billion? Was their EPS 87 cents or was it 96? I hate that stuff.
I hate that too. Constant currency changes, non-continuing operations, one-term impacts from lawsuits. This is why you and I hew towards, we'll stop using annoying financial acronyms, but we like to have the fullest picture of performance, not an adjusted one. And Bitcoin, I think, would be, we could call it a non-GAAP currency.
Yeah, no, to your point, you can hide. This is what I did for the first 2 years of my career, was auditing this stuff. You can hide an entire narrative inside of revenue, right? You could be showing hey, look, we made $1 billion this quarter in net income. But if you look at your cost of doing business, if it jumped 70% and it's skewing for the last 3 quarters and went from 50 to 60 to 70, well, you only got 2 more quarters before you're not going to make any money. And so that's exactly to your point. You have to read the whole thing, and you can't look at it in a silo of just 1 quarter either, because that doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, and this is why, when we cover Microsoft, we pay a lot of attention to their finances, because that shows how individual operating units are performing. And this goes across for all the major tech companies. But with Microsoft, with their recent changes to their reporting structures and how they break out revenue in different groups, you have to keep watching the shell game, because they love to take old businesses that are not doing as well and new businesses and kind of put them together to make it appear that things are more rosy than they are. And every company does this. It's fine. But it's also is frustrating from the outside to try to track kind of what lands in what bucket and what's actually doing well. And it can become even more opaque as companies get bigger. So Alphabet puts all of its crap in one bucket called Other Bets that loses tons of money, and all its good stuff in Google that makes tons of money. And so they get to go we're doing so great, and don't look at this over here. It's just kind of the normal financial shenanigans we see, but not that bad.
A question from the chat room kind of bridges the gap nicely here. Mr. PKI, he says, would there be a standard blockchain accounting method like GAAP going forward globally?
No. I don't see how that can possibly happen. It would require too much commonality, agreement, and common sense and good manners from the Bitcoin community, which is notoriously fractious and run by 19-year-old libertarian nerds in their mom's basement. And I don't even mean that really as pejorative. I just don't see how they can possibly get along.
Oh, that was an amazing burn.
I mean,
other question.
Cool, but it's go for it.
Yeah. Other question. How do you feel about run rates?
Used appropriately, they're fine, but companies will often obfuscate. So people will say, we're on a $100 million run rate, and they mean gross billings, not net revenue. So people will often use that as a way to fudge. So you can dial it down and say, look, I want to know your run rate. Like Microsoft does the commercial cloud run rate. I, a while ago, dialed in with them, figured out exactly what was in that cohort, and I understand it, and it's okay. But if it's at all fuzzy, I presume they're trying to lie to me more quickly than usual, and that makes me unhappy.
Yeah. Speaking of the cloud run rate, Microsoft was expected to hit said they would hit $20 billion in cloud run rate by the end of fiscal year 18, which is June 30th, 2018. But it looks like it might occur next quarter, possibly with their earnings. Yes. If not, I definitely think it'll happen by the end of the year.
Yeah, I forget what the actual comment was on their last earnings call, but they said something like, we're very confident about hitting this, this run rate goal. I'm like, yeah, you're like 18. Oh, Brad, help me out. 18.4, 18.5 billion was the last number.
Right around there.
I wrote about this, but I forget. Right. Yeah. So they've done it very well. But what's fun is if you go back in time and I've charted this out over the entire time they reported these figures, there were a couple quarters in there where the growth was pretty slow. And it wasn't kind of a for sure thing. Now it's definitely going to happen. But going back 6 or 7 quarters ago, it was a different story. And so to their credit, they've done the work to hit this number. But then Brad would ask, how much money are they making off of that commercial cloud run rate growth, and how efficient is that growth? That we don't know. But at a minimum, they're not going to face plant like they did on the Windows 10 device expectations number, which was something like 1 billion devices by some date, and they had to kind of pull back on that.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would throw in there too, and I only know this because of Inside Baseball, one of the issues Microsoft has is that they give a lot of Azure credits to their customers, and they go not utilized. And so I don't know how technically those unused credits shouldn't be counted toward Azure revenue, but how they're incentivizing people to get into that cloud and what they're classifying as cloud usage or cloud spend, it gets a little gray. And so we kind of, it gets real gray. Another company that is very good about hiding their cloud revenue is IBM. So there was a Forbes thing that came out, and I'm not making this up. I don't know all the details, but I highly recommend looking into it if this interests you in any capacity. Forbes came out and was boasting IBM, saying that they had the most cloud spend at $15 billion per year, but then somebody else commented and said, yeah, when you consider consulting fees to be cloud spend, everything's cloud. And so
yes, that's a stretch, I feel, in the accounting right there.
Yeah. Yep. So,
But I would add, though, the IBM thing is really funny because they're essentially a consulting shop with a small cloud business, and whatever the hell Watson is kind of stuck to the side of them like a barnacle.
Yep.
I'm not impressed by it. You're not impressed by it. And I think we're seeing the decline of the value of the word cloud. Cloud really just means internet, and we've let a lot of people get away with calling it something different for a long time. But the analogy here is if we launched email today, we would call it cloud mail, which kind of shows you how differentiated things are over time. But IBM, oh man, I don't know, Brad. Do they have a chance at all of being a serious cloud player in 10 years? I can't relate.
Can't see it. That's a tough question. They just came out with some new servers that have end-to-end cryptography built in, which I think is cool. But to be honest, I don't know enough about all the hardware players in the segment to say, okay, that's truly a differentiator yet. And people have to buy that hardware too. If you're going to go buy a new rack-mounted server that's, let's just say $100,000 a piece, are you going to buy it from IBM? Or are you going to go to HP? Or are you going to go to Dell? Because to your point, is IBM going to be around in 10, 15 years? Nobody knows.
Yeah, but if my other options are HPE or Dell, I mean, this is not exactly the forward edge, I feel, of when I think of who's kind of really leading tech. But then again, the hardware space has always been more conservative. I mean, from Cisco down to Nutanix, I mean, this space is changing a lot. Yeah. Hyperconvergence is a word that people use. I don't know what it means, but I've heard that word regarding servers, I think. As you can tell, this is where my knowledge stops, and I kind of start sounding like a complete moron. So I'll throw back to you.
No, that's extremely fair point. Actually, what a lot of companies are doing, Microsoft's doing it. I know Facebook is doing it. I wouldn't surprise me. I bet Google is doing it as well. They're actually just building their own servers at this point. They're just custom ordering whatever they want. And that's actually been a big hurt for all these server vendors, because when Microsoft builds out a data center that's $1 billion a piece, they're no longer going to the Dells and HP and placing orders for $100 million. They're just going right to the vendors and building their own stuff.
Well, if you go back to when Google started doing this, it was a big story in tech. People were very shocked at this. Why would they do that? Do they have the expertise? Is it going to work? Why is it more efficient? But now we kind of expect it. Now it's kind of the thing to do. And so there's kind of two classes of companies that can afford to build their own data centers and kind of run their own stuff. And those tend to be the public cloud companies, unsurprisingly. And then other companies that are stuck between building on someone else's stack like AWS or Azure, or investing in off-the-shelf parts that are going to be less efficient in the short term. So it's kind of like you really want to be a certain size in tech to get the efficiencies that the big dogs are going to use to beat you up. But you can't really, because the big dogs will then buy you and subsume you. So good luck.
Yep.
You almost have like a 5-part oligarchy in tech right now that I find slightly disconcerting.
5-part. Yeah.
5 So Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, and then Amazon.
Yeah. I was running through. I was like, is it really 5? It's like, yeah, no, that's about right. And credit to Google where it's due. I believe her name is Diane Greene, who came in and has kind of whipped up their cloud security. They've still got a long way to go, but to what you just said, there's very few companies who can afford to say, okay, here's a bunch of billions of dollars, just go build a whole bunch of data centers that can be redundant and actually afford to compete, because it takes a lot of money to get into that arena by any capacity. So
yeah, and to Google's credit, to Alphabet's credit, they have 2 women who are really super critical. Diane Greene on the cloud side, and then Ruth, who is now the CFO for all of Alphabet. And she is notoriously fantastic and also ruthless at cutting costs. And so they have essentially the best person in place for cloud and the best person to make it work financially, which is a power structure. I mean, that's really impressive. That's why I'm curious if they're going to be an Azure challenger for the number 2 space in the industry, because they just have the firepower behind the efforts. It's very impressive.
Yeah, and I think we can both agree this is a very long game. This is not something that's going to, there's no cycle to this. I think that it's going to be a very pervasive technology that's going to be around for decades to come. So if it takes them 15 years to get up to there, that's fine as long as they're growing along the way. But it's very much a long investment strategy by all accounts.
Yeah, that's 100% correct.
All right, Alex, let's change it up here a little bit. We're going to talk about you for a minute before we wrap up the show. What phone are you using?
What is this? iPhone 7 Plus or whatever it is. In black.
Will you buy the in black? Will you buy the iPhone 8 when it comes out, or whatever's coming in September?
Okay, I have to be honest. I can completely afford to just go out and buy it. But I'm trying to not let myself do that because my phone's great. So hopefully I won't, but there's probably a 35% chance that I'm just like, ooh, shiny, swipe. So we'll see.
I would put myself in that exact same bucket. Actually, Tom Warren was on yesterday, and we both sat here and said, we're gonna sit here and say, no, we're not gonna order it. And we're gonna sit here, we're gonna say, no, we're not gonna order it. And then if the day's gonna come out and say, you know what, I'm not gonna order it. And then like 3 weeks later, we'll be in the store and we'll be like, you know what, all right, I'm gonna buy.
Yep.
You're gonna pay me how much for
this one? Exactly. I was in New Orleans. My iPhone 6 was the chip that does Wi-Fi and like Bluetooth was failing, and it was driving me nuts. And so I just went to the Apple store down there, and I was like, "Look, I want a phone. Just give me that one." But And I just like, it was gone like 10 minutes. It was fantastic. They have a really good buying experience.
They do.
You don't even realize how much money you've spent. But I have Apple Care on my current phone, and so like I kind of want to like get the use out of that and so forth.
Sure.
But, I do want the new one. So
if one thing Apple has done exceptionally well, regardless of anything else they've done, they've convinced us that we need to buy a new phone every 2 years, and the carriers played into that too. But now they're getting down to the point where they want us to buy a new phone every year, and it's like, oh God, Jesus. Maybe that's the catalyst that kills the market, is all of us buying Apple crap.
Well, all hail God Emperor Apple, I guess, because here we are on a Microsoft themed network, and you and I are both raving about the next iPhone. So I think that's indicative of. But to be clear, I used to use Windows Phone. I used Windows Phone when it was Windows Phone 7 series, and then Windows Phone 7 and 7.5 and 7.6 and 8 and 8.1. So no hating, please.
Yep. Yeah, I think we'd all still be using it if it was actually a viable platform and had some good hardware. Next up, what laptop are you using?
So this is a work-issued 2015 MacBook Pro, Core i7, 16 gigs of RAM. CrunchBase, for better or for worse, is I think entirely Mac shop. But my laptop at home is a Surface Pro 4. So that's a Windows machine at home. But at work, I have to kind of use what they give me. So here we are.
Yeah, no, that's to be expected. And what browser do you typically use?
I use Chrome across all machines. So Chrome on this, Chrome on the Pro 4, and also Chrome on. I have a desktop at home because I'm a traditional nerd. So on the main Windows 10 machine, I also use Chrome. I find it simplest, frankly. So
Speaking of desktops, I didn't ask you this before the show, but you were flirting around on Twitter about building a gaming machine. Did you ever do that?
Close. I bought one. So I've got a pretty powerful rig at the house right now. It glows red. It plays Doom. And it's, I grew up with PCs, man. I grew up as a PC gamer. Yeah. I put in way too much time in Age of Empires 2 and Quake 3 and all of that, StarCraft 1 and 2. And, so to me, if I don't have a super serious PC around, I feel like I'm missing something. In the same way that I would feel naked without a phone, I feel like I need to have a serious computer at home. So I had that hooked up to only an okay monitor. It's like a 24-inch Dell. But while we're on gadgets, can I just tell you that I have that new Dell 43-inch like huge thing at my work desk over there? It is the best thing. I cannot get over how amazing it is to have that much space. It's fantastic.
Don't tell me that. That's very dangerous. What game? So you're playing Doom? Are there any games you're looking forward to coming out?
So my friend Ryan Lawler from TechCrunch actually made me get a PS4, which I thought was kind of like forsaking my Windows 10 roots. But I'm playing Destiny right now, very poorly, I'll add. But I'm looking forward to Destiny 2. And when I get some time off, I want to play Cities Skyline, which I have on my Windows 10 machine. But it's a game that you want to have some time to sit and enjoy and get into, and really jive with. I was a big SimCity fan back in the day.
Sure. As was I.
But gaming for me now, I mean, you work a lot, Brad. You know this. So gaming's like my relaxation. Like I get an hour here and there, and I get to kind of sit and calm down. So I don't really play a lot of I'm not playing Morrowind or Elder Scrolls or anything that takes a lot of active thinking, because that's just not kind of what I use gaming for today.
And last question of the day: what music services or any do you subscribe to?
Oh hell, I've been on Spotify since before it came to the United States. And I'm a big fan. I just wish they would charge me more money. I would love to pay. I use Spotify for probably 10 to 12 hours a day. So I would love to pay a lot more than $10 a month for the service, given the value I get out of it. But until I have a reason to change, I'm going to stick with Spotify. I haven't played with Groove yet. I've been meaning to. But after iTunes, I will never use an Apple Music product again. So it's either Spotify or Groove for me. And SoundCloud too online. There's a lot of stuff on SoundCloud you can't find anywhere else. So I'm a fan of that too.
Yep, I'm a big fan of Spotify. I don't know anybody who pays for it and doesn't like it. I mean, I'm like you. I have that thing streaming from about 7:30 in the morning until about 5 at night, until my kid gets home and my wife get home, and then once they go to bed from 7 to 8 or 9 o'clock when I'm down in the office doing whatever. So, Alex, where can people find you?
Well, most importantly, I'm on Twitter a lot. My Twitter name is Alex, just /Alex if you want to say hi. And if you are a financy techie person, you can go to crunchbase.news and check out what we're up to. I'm trying to be a little bit less loud and a little more quiet. So I don't know how much I want to talk about, come follow me. But yeah, mostly on Twitter.
I mean, Alex is a good follow. I've known him for many years. He's very insightful in the stuff. And what they're doing over at CrunchBase News is actually pretty good. You do a morning report every day? Monday through Friday?
Yeah. We do this Monday through Friday, and we now publish on the weekends, and we're launching a weekend newsletter tomorrow. And, it's, as you know, it is a lot of work to launch a media brand, but we are making progress, and all of our numbers are pointing in the right direction. Thank heavens. And I'm just hoping that keeps going long enough that I can build something big enough that it has its own momentum. So on we roll.
There you go. Definitely check that out, guys. And Alex, very much appreciated you stopping by, taking out of time on your Friday.
Of course.
And as always, guys, we do this Monday through Friday. You can find us at throt.com, First Ring Daily, and have yourselves a wonderful weekend.